Welcome to Smart Brain Senior. Today, we explore why self-identity is the ultimate driver of brain strength after 50, and how your thoughts, beliefs, and daily actions directly shape your cognitive resilience. Your brain after 50 is still capable of remarkable rewiring. It can strengthen connections, rebuild pathways, and adapt to new information, but only if your identity signals to your brain that growth and learning are possible. One of the most overlooked aspects of brain health is the alignment between identity and action. Your brain does not distinguish between a belief and a repeated action. It strengthens whichever neural pathways are consistently reinforced. If you see yourself as someone who forgets easily or not tech-savvy, your brain adapts to these expectations, reducing plasticity in regions responsible for memory, focus, and executive function. Conversely, adopting the identity of someone capable, curious, and always learning primes your brain for neuroplasticity. Even small daily choices, such as learning a new skill, reading complex material, or engaging socially, serve as signals to your brain confirming that you are mentally agile. These signals strengthen neural networks in the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus, critical for memory, decision-making, and problem-solving. Scientific studies reveal that older adults who embrace a positive self-identity exhibit increased cortical thickness in key brain regions. Cortical thickness correlates with processing speed, attention, and working memory. In essence, your self-concept is literally shaping the physical structure of your brain. There are specific habits that reinforce self-identity, and therefore brain strength after 50. Daily reflection for 5-10 minutes helps you assess your thoughts and beliefs, reinforcing your capacity for learning and adaptation. Active engagement in mentally and socially stimulating activities, like learning new technology or participating in group discussions, signals to your brain that it remains sharp. Regular physical movement increases blood flow and neurotrophic factors, which help neurons grow and strengthen connections. Mindfulness and meditation enhance emotional regulation, reduce stress-related damage, and reinforce the identity of someone in control of their mind. Purpose-driven actions that align with personal meaning create a neural feedback loop, boosting focus, memory, and cognitive resilience. Stress management is another crucial factor. Chronic stress releases cortisol, which impairs hippocampal function and reduces neuroplasticity. Individuals with an empowered self-identity are more likely to engage in stress-reducing habits, while those with negative self-concepts experience amplified stress, weakening neural connections. For example, two people aged 55 facing the same complex problem may have vastly different outcomes depending on identity. The person believing they are incapable hesitates and becomes stressed, impairing memory and focus. The person believing in their adaptability approaches the problem methodically, maintaining clarity and stimulating dopamine, which strengthens learning and confidence pathways. Flexibility of self-identity is also essential. After 50, the brain can reprogram itself, but rigidity slows this process. Adopting new roles such as learner, mentor, or creative thinker signals the brain to form new connections and promote cognitive longevity. Social reinforcement is critical as well. Peers who support your empowered identity provide real-world validation, enhancing self-efficacy and memory consolidation. Loneliness, in contrast, erodes hippocampal function and prefrontal activity, accelerating cognitive decline. Your action plan today is simple but powerful. Identify a limiting belief about your brain or abilities, replace it with an empowering statement. Commit to one activity that reinforces this identity, whether learning a skill, exercising, meditating, or engaging socially, and observe your brain's response over the week. Notice increased focus, clarity, or emotional balance. Remember, your brain after 50 is a responsive organ. Each conscious choice aligned with your identity strengthens its architecture, making you resilient to age-related decline. The choices you make today are shaping the mind you will carry into the future. Subscribe to Smart Brain Senior now to continue learning how to activate your full mental potential. The brain you have today is the foundation for the mind you'll have tomorrow. The foundation of your cognitive power after 50 depends largely on how your brain interprets your self-identity. Self-identity is not merely a collection of thoughts about who you are. It is a biological signal that shapes neuronal connectivity, hormonal balance, and the very way your brain adapts to challenges. When this signal is strong, deliberate, and aligned with growth, your brain actively reorganizes itself to support resilience, memory, and focus. Neuroscience shows that the brain remains plastic well into later decades. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions such as decision-making, planning, and prioritization, continues to form new connections when consistently stimulated. Likewise, the hippocampus, critical for forming and retrieving memories, retains the ability to grow dendritic spines, tiny projections that enhance communication between neurons throughout life. However, the efficiency of this neuroplasticity is heavily influenced by self-perception. People who perceive themselves as adaptable, capable, and mentally agile trigger biochemical cascades that strengthen these neural pathways. BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, is a key player. Elevated BDNF levels enhance synaptic plasticity, support neurogenesis in the hippocampus, and improve long-term potentiation, a foundational mechanism for learning. Those who maintain an empowered identity after 50% naturally exhibit higher BDNF activity, essentially giving their neurons a nutrient-rich environment to thrive. On the other hand, self-limiting beliefs, thinking, "I'm too old to learn," or "my memory is failing," elevate cortisol levels. Cortisol suppresses hippocampal function, impairs synaptic formation, and accelerates age-related cognitive decline. Your identity shapes daily habits in subtle but powerful ways. When you internalize the idea that you are a lifelong learner, you naturally engage in mentally stimulating activities. Learning a new skill, reading challenging material, solving puzzles, or even mastering a new technology activates multiple brain regions simultaneously. The prefrontal cortex, parietal lobes, and temporal regions fire in synchrony, creating robust neural networks that enhance attention, memory, and problem-solving. Physical exercise is amplified when guided by identity. Seeing yourself as an active, vibrant individual transforms movement from obligation into automatic behavior. Cardiovascular exercise improves cerebral blood flow, delivering oxygen and essential nutrients to neurons. Strength training triggers the release of IGF-1, which supports neuron survival and growth. Even short daily walks done consistently with the mindset of caring for your brain maintain synaptic density and reduce age-related shrinkage in key areas. Social identity also influences brain strength. Engaging with like-minded peers, participating in meaningful discussions, and maintaining supportive relationships activate the brain's social cognition networks. The temporal parietal junction, medial prefrontal cortex, and anterior cingulate cortex all respond to authentic social engagement, reinforcing pathways linked to empathy, problem-solving, and emotional regulation. Older adults who maintain a strong sense of social purpose show slower cognitive decline and higher resilience against stress-induced damage. Nutrition interacts with self-identity in complementary ways. Individuals who see themselves as brain-focused or cognitively disciplined are more likely to make dietary choices that support neural health. Omega-3 fatty acids, polyphenols from berries, antioxidants, and B vitamins fuel neurotransmitter synthesis, protect against oxidative stress, and promote myelination. Pairing intentional nutrition with a growth-oriented self-concept enhances neurochemical balance and boosts cognitive performance after 50. Sleep, often underestimated, is directly modulated by identity. People who view themselves as prioritizing brain health tend to adopt habits that preserve restorative sleep cycles. Deep sleep supports glymphatic clearance, the process by which metabolic waste is removed from the brain. Slow-wave sleep consolidates memories and strengthens synaptic connections. Those who neglect this aspect of self-care compromise hippocampal function and accelerate cognitive decline. Stress management is another domain where identity shapes outcomes. A self-concept rooted in resilience and calmness triggers adaptive responses to stress. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is regulated more efficiently. Cortisol spikes are minimized, and prefrontal control over the amygdala is strengthened. This reduces emotional reactivity, preserves neuronal integrity, and enhances decision-making under pressure. Conversely, a victim or anxious identity amplifies stress responses, weakening the very circuits needed for executive function and memory. Purpose-driven identity is perhaps the most transformative factor. Individuals over 50 who define themselves through meaningful work, mentorship, creative pursuits, or altruism exhibit structural and functional advantages in the brain. fMRI studies indicate increased gray matter density in regions associated with reward, motivation, and executive control. This structural reinforcement supports sustained attention, better emotional regulation, and heightened problem-solving capacity, giving the mature brain a cognitive edge. Learning speed may slow slightly with age, but efficiency increases when self-identity aligns with curiosity, resilience, and intentional engagement. Older adults who maintain a proactive identity leverage accumulated experience to optimize neural circuits, prioritize relevant information, and filter distractions. This strategic use of the brain offsets the minor processing speed decline that is typical after 50, resulting in sharper decision-making and enhanced mental agility. Meditation, mindfulness, and reflection further harness self-identity. Viewing oneself as calm, focused, and resilient promotes sustained practice. These activities increase cortical thickness in the prefrontal cortex, strengthen connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and amygdala, and reduce default mode network overactivity. The outcome is a brain that is both responsive and stable, capable of complex thought without being overwhelmed by emotional noise. Finally, self-identity determines consistency. A person who identifies as a lifelong learner, a resilient thinker, or a mentally vibrant individual is more likely to maintain cognitive-enhancing routines daily. Habits like exercise, proper nutrition, mental challenges, social engagement, stress management, and quality sleep are integrated seamlessly into life. Without this identity anchor, even the most scientifically proven strategies are inconsistently applied, diminishing their effectiveness. By nurturing a strong, growth-oriented self-identity after 50, you are essentially programming your brain to remain adaptable, resilient, and high-performing. Each choice, thought, and action reinforces neural pathways, strengthens memory circuits, and enhances focus. The mature brain responds to identity as a blueprint for rewiring itself, ensuring that mental clarity, emotional stability, and cognitive agility are not only preserved but amplified over time. This alignment between self-concept and neurobiology is the hidden lever behind peak cognitive function in midlife and beyond. Individuals who embrace this principle experience more effortless learning, deeper focus, and a stronger ability to manage stress and emotion. The brain is not slowing down. It is evolving, reorganizing, and specializing based on the signals you provide through identity, habits, and intention. Understanding this principle changes everything. It reveals why some adults over 50 maintain exceptional cognitive performance while others experience decline despite similar lifestyle factors. The differentiator is identity-driven neural programming. By consciously cultivating an empowered self-concept, you provide the brain with the guidance, motivation, and biochemical environment it needs to rewire itself continuously, making midlife and later years some of the most cognitively potent decades of life. The brain after 50 is not a passive organ waiting to decline. It is a dynamic, adaptive system that responds to signals from your identity, environment, and daily behaviors. What truly sets apart individuals who retain sharp cognition from those who experience decline is the consistent alignment between self-perception and brain-boosting actions. When self-identity is consciously shaped to prioritize resilience, growth, and adaptability, the neural architecture itself reorganizes to reinforce those traits. Cognitive reserve is one of the primary mechanisms through which identity exerts influence. Cognitive reserve refers to the brain's capacity to compensate for age-related changes and damage by leveraging alternative networks and strategies. Adults over 50 who maintain a growth-oriented identity continuously challenge their neural circuits, engage in intellectually stimulating activities, and create diverse cognitive experiences. This repeated engagement strengthens synaptic connections, fortifies redundant pathways, and maintains executive function. In contrast, those who define themselves by limitations inadvertently reduce cognitive reserve, making them more susceptible to memory lapses and executive dysfunction. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning, attention, and decision-making, is particularly sensitive to self-identity cues. Believing that you are capable, adaptable, and mentally agile activates prefrontal regions more consistently, enhancing top-down control over impulses, emotional reactions, and attention. This is why older adults who view themselves as lifelong learners demonstrate superior focus, reasoning, and problem-solving compared to peers with a fixed mindset about age-related decline. Neurochemistry is deeply intertwined with identity. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with motivation, reward, and learning, is regulated in part by self-perception. When you perceive yourself as capable and purposeful, dopamine release is optimized during goal-directed activities, creating a feedback loop that reinforces engagement and learning. Conversely, a self-concept centered on decline or helplessness suppresses dopamine pathways, diminishing motivation and reducing neural adaptability. The hippocampus, the central hub for memory formation and retrieval, also responds to identity. Research shows that positive self-belief and intentional engagement stimulate neurogenesis in the dentate gyrus, a subregion of the hippocampus. Individuals over 50 who approach life with curiosity and challenge continually grow new neurons, maintain synaptic plasticity, and retain robust memory function. Negative self-perception, chronic stress, or disengagement reduces hippocampal volume, accelerating forgetfulness and cognitive rigidity. Exercise, when integrated with identity, becomes far more than physical fitness. It becomes a cognitive strategy. Adults who identify as active thinkers or brain-focused movers are more likely to sustain aerobic workouts, resistance training, and coordination exercises that stimulate brain health. Aerobic activity improves cerebral perfusion, delivering oxygen and glucose essential for neuron metabolism. Resistance training promotes the release of IGF-1 and BDNF, supporting synaptic plasticity. Coordination exercises, including dance or Tai Chi, activate the cerebellum and basal ganglia, enhancing motor control, timing, and cognitive flexibility simultaneously. Nutrition habits are amplified by self-identity. Seeing yourself as a cognitively disciplined adult encourages consistent intake of nutrients that fuel neuronal health. Omega-3 fatty acids from fatty fish, polyphenols from berries, antioxidants from vegetables, and B vitamins from whole grains all contribute to neurotransmitter synthesis, oxidative stress reduction, and myelination. Combined with identity-driven consistency, these dietary choices reinforce the biochemical environment necessary for optimal cognition. SL-EP, often overlooked, is directly modulated by self-perception. Adults who prioritize brain health as a core part of their identity establish sleep routines that support glymphatic clearance, synaptic consolidation, and hormonal balance. Deep, uninterrupted sleep allows the brain to remove metabolic waste, strengthen synapses, and solidify memory. Those who neglect this aspect of identity, viewing sleep as optional or secondary, compromise hippocampal and prefrontal function, accelerating cognitive decline. Social engagement is another domain where identity exerts profound effects. Adults over 50 who define themselves as socially active and connected experience higher gray matter density in regions linked to empathy, problem-solving, and executive function. Participation in meaningful relationships, group activities, and mentoring stimulates networks that support attention, emotional regulation, and adaptive learning. Social disengagement, often rooted in negative self-perception, deprives the brain of these critical stimulations, weakening neural resilience. Mindfulness and meditation further illustrate the synergy between self-identity and neuroplasticity. Viewing oneself as a calm, centered, and focused individual enhances adherence to these practices. Meditation increases prefrontal cortical thickness, strengthens connectivity with the amygdala, and modulates default mode network activity. Over time, these structural and functional adaptations result in improved emotional regulation, sustained focus, and reduced susceptibility to stress-related cognitive decline. Stress management is also identity-dependent. Adults over 50, who perceive themselves as resilient and capable, exhibit adaptive responses to stress. including controlled hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis activation and balanced cortisol levels. This protects neurons in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, preserves synaptic integrity, and maintains mental clarity. Conversely, identifying as a victim of age amplifies stress responses, disrupts neural networks, and accelerates cognitive decline. Ultimately, self-identity acts as a master regulator for brain function after 50. It dictates how you approach learning, exercise, nutrition, sleep, social engagement, and stress management. Those who actively cultivate an identity aligned with growth, resilience, and cognitive optimization reap significant neurological advantages. Neural pathways strengthen, cognitive reserve expands, emotional regulation improves, and memory remains agile. This principle explains why some adults retain extraordinary mental clarity and decision-making ability well into their 60s, 70s, and beyond, while others experience rapid cognitive decline despite similar environmental circumstances. The differentiating factor is the deliberate, identity-driven engagement of the brain's adaptive potential. By consistently reinforcing a self-concept that emphasizes capability, curiosity, and resilience, your brain essentially rewires itself. Dendrites grow, synapses strengthen, and neural networks reorganize to optimize learning, focus, and memory. The mature brain, far from slowing down, becomes specialized, strategic, and highly adaptive when guided by purposeful identity. The concept of self-identity as a driver of brain health after 50 extends beyond cognitive reserve and neuroplasticity. It is the foundation of intentional neuroadaptation. When adults consciously define themselves as capable, adaptive, and mentally engaged, they send continuous signals to the brain's executive and limbic systems, prompting sustained structural and functional changes. This is not hypothetical. Decades of neuroscience research confirm that belief, perception, and self-concept directly influence dendritic growth, synapse formation, and even neurogenesis in specific brain regions. One of the most critical mechanisms at play is the reinforcement of prefrontal limbic connectivity. The prefrontal cortex governs decision-making, planning, and attention, while the limbic system regulates emotion, stress responses, and motivation. Adults who cultivate a strong, purposeful identity after 50% display enhanced prefrontal regulation of limbic activity. This results in calmer, more measured responses to stress, increased mental clarity, and an ability to maintain focus on long-term goals despite environmental distractions. By contrast, a fragmented or passive self-identity diminishes prefrontal oversight, allowing the limbic system to dominate and resulting in anxiety, distraction, and impulsivity. Emotional intelligence, which peaks in many individuals after midlife, is amplified when self-identity is deliberately shaped. Adults who perceive themselves as empathetic, self-aware, and emotionally competent exhibit stronger activation in the anterior cingulate cortex and orbitofrontal regions, areas critical for social cognition and decision-making. This heightened connectivity allows mature adults to interpret social cues accurately, regulate emotions effectively, and make complex decisions with clarity. The difference is striking. Two adults of the same chronological age can display dramatically different emotional and cognitive resilience, with identity acting as the differentiating factor. The hippocampus, central to memory formation and spatial navigation, is particularly sensitive to the effects of identity-driven engagement. Adults over 50 who adopt an identity centered on growth and learning demonstrate increased hippocampal volume and enhanced synaptic density. This occurs through a combination of neurogenesis, strengthened synapses, and adaptive connectivity patterns. In practical terms, this translates into improved memory retention, faster recall, and superior problem-solving skills. Those who internalize beliefs of limitation, on the other hand, exhibit hippocampal atrophy and reduced synaptic plasticity, accelerating cognitive decline. Motivation and reward systems are likewise modulated by self-perception. Dopamine pathways, which underlie goal-directed behavior, are reinforced when adults maintain a self-concept that values achievement, curiosity, and mastery. Regular engagement in mentally stimulating activities, learning new skills, solving complex problems, or exploring novel environments, releases dopamine, which reinforces neural pathways associated with attention, learning, and executive function. Conversely, a passive or defeatist identity suppresses dopamine activity, reducing engagement and allowing neural networks to weaken over time. Physical activity, when integrated with a growth-oriented self-identity, exerts profound cognitive benefits. Adults who define themselves as active thinkers or brain-focused movers are more likely to sustain aerobic exercise, resistance training, and coordination-based routines. Aerobic activity improves cerebral blood flow, enhancing oxygen and nutrient delivery to neurons and promoting angiogenesis. Resistance training stimulates neurotrophic factors like BDNF and IGF-1, supporting synaptic plasticity and dendritic growth. Coordination exercises, including balance, dance, or Tai Chi, engage the cerebellum and basal ganglia, strengthening motor cognitive integration. Identity-driven adherence ensures consistency, which is critical for long-term neural adaptation. Nutrition, aligned with identity, further reinforces cognitive resilience. Adults who perceive themselves as cognitively disciplined make sustained dietary choices that optimize brain function. Omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, polyphenols, and B vitamins support neurotransmitter synthesis, reduce oxidative stress, and maintain myelination. Over time, this creates a neuroprotective environment that enhances synaptic plasticity and stabilizes mood, focus, and memory. Identity acts as the adherence mechanism, transforming knowledge into behavior and behavior into measurable neural change. Sleep, long considered a passive state, is redefined through identity. Adults over 50 who adopt a self-concept that prioritizes brain health cultivate consistent sleep routines, optimizing lymphatic clearance, synaptic consolidation, and hormonal balance. Deep, uninterrupted sleep clears neurotoxins, strengthens synapses, and consolidates learning. Neglecting this aspect of identity, viewing sleep as secondary, compromises these restorative processes, accelerating cognitive decline. Social and intellectual engagement is also modulated by identity. Adults who perceive themselves as socially connected, curious, and influential maintain denser gray matter in regions responsible for social cognition, executive function, and emotional regulation. Participation in discussions, mentorship, collaborative problem-solving, and community involvement reinforces neural circuits involved in memory, attention, and reasoning. Those who perceive themselves as isolated or disengaged deprive the brain of these critical stimulations, weakening adaptive potential. Mindfulness and meditation practices illustrate the interplay between identity and neuroplasticity. A self-concept that embraces calm, focus, and presence increases adherence to meditation routines, which in turn strengthens the prefrontal cortex, enhances connectivity with the amygdala, and optimizes default mode network activity. This structural and functional improvement results in heightened emotional regulation, reduced stress reactivity, and enhanced attention span. Identity-driven consistency ensures these changes are not transient but integrated into the brain's functional architecture. Stress management is fundamentally tied to self-perception. Adults who identify as resilient and capable show controlled hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis activation, balanced cortisol levels, and preserved hippocampal function. Chronic stress is minimized, protecting neurons in the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus. In contrast, perceiving oneself as a victim of circumstances amplifies stress responses, disrupting synaptic integrity and accelerating cognitive decline. Ultimately, self-identity after 50 is not merely a psychological concept, it is a biological signal. It dictates neural firing patterns, synaptic reinforcement, and functional organization. Identity-driven engagement transforms the aging brain from a passive organ susceptible to decline into an adaptive, resilient, and highly capable system. Those who actively shape their self-concept experience superior memory, attention, reasoning, and emotional regulation. The brain, in turn, rewards this alignment by reorganizing itself to optimize cognitive function. Adults who deliberately cultivate an identity of growth, resilience, and cognitive prioritization activate a cascade of neurobiological mechanisms. Dendritic arborization, synaptic strengthening, neurogenesis, and enhanced connectivity become natural outcomes. Mental clarity, focus, memory, and emotional intelligence are reinforced, providing a competitive advantage in decision-making, social engagement, and personal fulfillment. The brain, far from declining, evolves into a specialized, strategic, and adaptive organ capable of sustaining high-level performance well into later life by embedding growth, curiosity, and resilience into the very core of identity. The adult brain after 50 achieves an unparalleled level of efficiency, adaptability, and strength. This is the real power of identity-driven neuroplasticity. As we reach the final stage of exploring how self-identity shapes brain strength after 50, it becomes clear that the principle is simple, yet profound. The mind interprets self-perception as a signal to adapt, reorganize, and optimize. This is no metaphor. Decades of neuroscience studies confirm that neural circuits respond directly to intentional patterns of thought, belief, and behavior. For adults over 50, identity acts as both the guide and the fuel for this continuous brain transformatio. One of the most striking outcomes of identity-driven neuroplasticity is enhanced executive function. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning, decision-making, and attention, becomes more efficient when adults maintain a strong sense of purpose and capability. By perceiving themselves as competent, curious, and mentally active, they reinforce pathways that regulate cognitive flexibility, problem-solving, and goal-directed behavior. This effect is not gradual. The brain's reward system, particularly dopaminergic circuits, responds immediately to self-affirming patterns, reinforcing engagement and focus. Emotional resilience also reaches new heights through identity modulation. Adults who view themselves as emotionally intelligent, composed, and socially capable demonstrate superior connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. This allows for measured responses to stress, reduced anxiety, and heightened social acuity. In practical terms, it translates to smoother interpersonal interactions, better decision-making under pressure, and an enhanced ability to navigate complex social environments. Individuals who neglect identity reinforcement, by contrast, allow stress and emotion to dominate, undermining cognitive clarity and accelerating decline. Memory performance, particularly episodic and working memory, is profoundly influenced by self-identity. Adults who internalize a growth-oriented, cognitively disciplined identity exhibit increased hippocampal volume, denser synaptic networks, and improved long-term potentiation. This results in faster recall, sharper spatial navigation, and superior retention of new information. When identity is passive or defeatist, hippocampal atrophy is more pronounced, synaptic pruning accelerates, and memory deficits appear earlier and progress more rapidly. Motivation and sustained engagement are also modulated by self-perception. Adults over 50 who identify as learners, explorers, or mentally agile consistently seek out new knowledge, challenge themselves cognitively, and participate in activities that stimulate the brain. This engagement activates the mesolimbic dopamine system, reinforcing learning and attention circuits while supporting the prefrontal cortex. Those who internalize beliefs of limitation experience reduced curiosity, lower engagement, and diminished neural reinforcement. Physical exercise, when combined with identity reinforcement, amplifies cognitive benefits. Adults who define themselves as active and mentally invested maintain consistent aerobic activity, resistance training, and coordination-based exercises. Aerobic movement improves cerebral blood flow, oxygenation, and nutrient delivery. Resistance training increases neurotrophic factors such as BDNF and IGF-1, supporting dendritic growth and synaptic plasticity. Coordination exercises engage the cerebellum and basal ganglia, strengthening motor cognitive integration. Identity ensures these routines are consistent, turning behavioral consistency into measurable neural adaptation. Nutrition, integrated with identity, further optimizes brain function. Adults who see themselves as disciplined, health-conscious thinkers prioritize nutrient-dense foods that support neurochemical balance, reduce oxidative stress, and protect synapses. Omega-3 fatty acids, polyphenols, antioxidants, and B vitamins enhance neurotransmission and maintain myelin integrity. By contrast, neglecting identity-driven dietary discipline accelerates cognitive decline and undermines structural brain health. Sleep remains one of the most potent tools for identity-driven brain optimization. Adults over 50 who adopt a self-concept that prioritizes brain health maintain consistent, high-quality sleep routines. Deep sleep allows glymphatic clearance, synaptic consolidation, and hormonal regulation. Skipping or undervaluing sleep disrupts these processes, preventing memory consolidation, impairing emotional regulation, and compromising neuroplasticity. Identity-driven adherence ensures that the brain receives this nightly restoration reliably. Social and intellectual engagement framed by identity strengthens multiple cognitive domains. Adults who perceive themselves as socially connected, curious, and influential actively participate in discussions, mentoring, collaborative problem-solving, and community involvement. These activities reinforce gray matter in regions associated with social cognition, executive function, and emotional regulation. Isolation or disengagement, in contrast, reduces stimulation, weakening these networks and accelerating cognitive decline. Mindfulness, meditation, and deliberate attention practices also benefit from identity reinforcement. Adults who see themselves as capable of focus and emotional regulation maintain consistent meditation routines, which strengthen prefrontal amygdala connectivity and optimize default mode network activity. These neural adaptations improve attention, emotional resilience, and cognitive control. Identity ensures consistency, allowing these benefits to accumulate and persist over time. Stress regulation, arguably the most critical factor after 50, is directly influenced by self-identity. Adults who see themselves as resilient exhibit controlled hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis activity, balanced cortisol levels, and protected hippocampal function. They respond to challenges with composure, preserving neural integrity and promoting cognitive longevity. Conversely, a passive identity amplifies stress responses, accelerating dendritic loss and reducing synaptic efficiency. In summary, self-identity after 50 acts as the master regulator of brain health. It dictates which neural pathways are reinforced, which synapses strengthen, and how efficiently networks reorganize. By intentionally cultivating growth, resilience, curiosity, and cognitive discipline, adults transform their brains into adaptive, efficient, and high-performing systems. Memory, focus, emotional intelligence, and executive function are no longer left to chance. They are sculpted by the conscious alignment of self-perception with action. For those over 50, the choice is clear. Define yourself as a capable, resilient, and engaged thinker, and the brain will follow. The neurobiological rewards are tangible, structural, functional, and performance-based. Self-identity is the bridge between chronological age and cognitive vitality, the differentiator between decline and sustained mental strength. The mature brain, when guided by intentional self-perception, can remain agile, sharp, and powerful well into later decades, rewriting the rules of aging entirely. The implications are transformative. Adults who adopt a growth-oriented identity experience measurable improvements in attention, memory, problem-solving, emotional regulation, and social cognition. Brain networks reorganize to favor efficiency, resilience, and adaptability. This is not a theoretical benefit. It is observable, measurable, and consistent with decades of neuroscience research. The mature mind, guided by self-identity, is capable of achieving unprecedented levels of clarity, focus, and insight, defying the limitations traditionally associated with aging by embedding cognitive discipline, curiosity, and resilience into the core of self-identity. Adults unlock a brain that is not just preserved, but enhanced. The structural and functional reorganization, facilitated by identity-driven engagement, transforms midlife and beyond into a period of cognitive empowerment, creativity, and emotional mastery. Adults who embrace this approach are not simply surviving, they are thriving, building a brain that is as strong, adaptive, and capable as it has ever been,